What's going on? It's Friday. Carl is gonna say that Fridays are awesome again, kind of, sort of. All right, so we got a really heavy topic right at the beginning. I'm glad CNN 10 spends a lot of time on this because it is really important. It's shaped so much in the world. It's shaped U.S. policy for almost 100 years, and we're talking about Israel. We're going to talk about the Gaza Strip. We're going to talk about the West Bank. We're actually going to talk about like all three major Western religions. Okay, so that would be the Jewish religion, Christianity, and Islam. And we'll get into that in a minute. But I do want to talk about how there is a group they're going to mention on CNN 10 that I would like you to know about, and that is Hamas. Hamas. And when we think of Palestine, Palestinians, think of Muslims, okay? And then Israel is Jewish. I'm stereotyping, it might be like 97%, but that's what it is, mostly. So Hamas is considered a terrorist group by a lot of people, okay, like the EU, the US, Israel, because they have attacked civilians, non-military people. They've attacked civilians. But it's very tricky when you talk about like terrorists and certain terrorist groups. They're fighting for a cause. They want a separate state. They want a state where, okay, we have some land that's like partly for Jewish people. We want a land for mostly Muslim people, right? That's their whole agenda. But there are a lot of people in that land that feel that Hamas is correct. Like, yes, I'm recording this a little late because there are students in the hallway. They're just coming into school, so I hope that's not too distracting. So Hamas is a terrorist group to some, but to others, they're like freedom. So there's a saying that a terrorist to one person is a freedom fighter to another person. So just because some people think that's a terrorist group, others are right behind Hamas and like, yes, we need this state. I think it's hard to argue, though, like, oh, you shouldn't be attacking civilians. So they do that, and that's why some consider them a terrorist group. CNN 10 is going to talk about a war in 1967 where Israel just kicks like a ton of butt, takes a whole bunch of land from Israel, from Syria, from Jordan, Egypt, I think, as well. So Israel was fighting like 6 or 7 countries at the time. You may think like, how did a little country like Israel do all this? Well, you need to know that Israel, in the past at least, and somewhat today, has been backed by the U.S. They have gotten a lot of supplies from the U.S. So it wasn't a lot of times like with the Vietnam War. Like, how did little old Vietnam stand up to the U.S.? Well, I mean, there are a bunch of reasons, but Vietnam was also backed by the Soviet Union and China at the time. So it wasn't really the U.S. against Vietnam. And just like when we talked about Afghanistan, and at least when the Soviet Union in the late 70s, we just talked about this last week, when the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan, it wasn't just Afghanistan versus the Soviet Union. The U.S. was backing Afghanistan. That happens a lot, especially in the Cold War. So not that the 6-Day War in 1967 is part of the Cold War, but yeah, Israel was able to grab a bunch of land, and they grabbed the West Bank. And this is a piece of, they're going to talk about it a lot in CNN 10 and tell you all the religious sites that make up the West Bank. And in 1967, the UN, that's kind of like the police of the world, they told Israel, yeah, you invaded there, and that was wrong. You should back out. Well, 2021, they're still occupying the West Bank. It's changed a little bit over the years, so it's not as much, but it's still, there's a huge piece of the West Bank that Israel controls. So let's talk about religion for a second. And what makes this so difficult is that the Western religions, they're called because of Abraham. They're called the Abri. I don't think I can say it, but after Abraham was a religious figure, all of these religions have descended. The three major ones I'm going to talk about right now. So Judaism, Christianity, Islam. The problem is they all have a connected history. So the Jewish religion came first, but Christianity took a lot of the Jewish religion and made it their own. Like, it's just kind of like, and anybody who's very religious is not probably gonna like how I'm trying to simplify this, but it's almost like part two of the Jewish religion, Christianity. I mean, I'm making it way too simple, but they have a connected history. Okay. And then after Christianity, Islam comes along. And guess what? Islam is built on some of the history of Christianity and Judaism. So that's where the problem lies, that these sacred religious lands, like all three religions claim them. So that's where it can get, so those three religions they have so much in common, which can be problematic, and they have so many differences, which is also problematic. So I'm trying to make it super, super simple, but that's it, kind of in a nutshell. Of course, it's way more complex than that, but for this class, I just kind of want you to know, and that's what a lot of this fighting is about religion. The next thing they're going to talk about is pipelines, and President Biden yesterday signed an executive order. We've talked about executive orders before. It's basically, while the president is president, they have a lot of power. An executive order, that means you don't need Congress. You don't need the other two branches of government to get something done, which is good and bad because, like, it's not lasting. Once a new president comes in, they could decide to get rid of that executive order. But yesterday, President Biden signed an executive order. I mean, government usually takes a long time. An executive order, very quick. So he signed an executive order that basically said, when the government is buying software, we need a lot more security than we have now, pretty much. Okay. And I think that's about, the pipeline. For that ransomware, remember we talked about ransomware, where a company can come in and steal your plans, steal the way you operate, and then you have to pay them to get that stuff back. That's what happened with that Colonial Pipeline. And so approximately, I guess, $5 million was paid. Interesting. That's a good way to make $5 million. But I don't know, if you get caught, I think you go to jail. Like, you can't do like cyber terrorism. So it's risky. Don't think of that as a career solution, please. Don't, when you're asked next year in class, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? Don't say I want to be a cyber terrorist. Don't tell people that. I mean, you can make some good money, but there's a high risk. It's a high risk. You could go to jail. So don't do that. And sadly for me, but probably happily for you, I found out, Carl will tell us, May 28th is the last CNN 10. So you're probably like, yes. But I know some of you actually like CNN 10. So that's good. So it's Friday. As Carl said, Fridays are, I think he didn't say they're awesome today. He says they're pretty good. So I think Fridays are awesome. We're going to be getting out of here in about 10 minutes. Come on. NWA testing, we're almost done. It's almost done. It's so close you can smell the weekend.